There was a moment on a Friday night at Texas, our university in Keene, Texas. Well, I guess the music was rocking out, and the president felt like the music had gone over the line. Somehow got up onto the stage and came over and grabbed the microphone away from the singer and said, "This concert is over." And the campus chaplain, a young man, came out and grabbed the microphone back from the president and said, "No, it's not." And the band started up again and kept going. And the president was fired and the chaplain stayed. Amen. Someone told me last night about a movie called American Sniper. I have not seen it. I really know nothing about it, but he told me this story is the opening scene, so I went online to read the story. And evidently, this mostly true story about this man who killed a couple hundred people in Iraq, world-class sniper. In this scene, he's up on a building, and the American tanks are coming, and he sees this woman in her veil and her young boy come out, and he sees her hand a boy a grenade to throw at the tank. And now he has this woman and that little boy in his sight. And the boy begins to run towards the tank, and he has a choice. Kill a little boy and save your American soldiers, your buddies, or let the little boy go and your guys die. What would you do? And he shoots the kid as the kid gets ready to throw it. The mother goes over there, her son just died, picks up the grenade, and she begins to get ready to throw it, and he kills her too. All in the name of religion. That a mother is willing to use her son and sacrifice her son to make other people obey your beliefs and what you stand for. And I don't know how you felt, but to read and see the story about this little 10-year-old girl in Nigeria. I have Nigerians in my classes. And a 10-year-old girl, someone ties a bomb onto her, and she is a suicide bomber in Nigeria and blows up a bunch of people in a market. And half of her body flies. That's a horrible story. Boko Haram. Who does this? Who takes a 10-year-old little girl and ties a bomb onto her and then explodes it and destroys this little girl for the sake of your religion and your beliefs? How do you do that? It's bad enough if you talk a 21-year-old into doing it. A 10-year-old little girl. It's horrifying. On top of all the other stories, in 21 Egyptian Coptic Orthodox young men. We have rented to Egypt Coptic Orthodox here and in my church in Norbury Park. Wonderful people. They're just working in a country. They all get beheaded. 300 some girls at a Christian school, just kids going to a school, and all of a sudden, they're in this camp. 217 of them still have not been accounted for. Maybe married off to the soldiers. It's horrible. All in the name of religion. Trying to make people who will not give in to your beliefs voluntarily, then you'll use the sword and a gun to do it. And now Boko Haram wants to join up with ISIS and make this giant caliphate all across where Islam will be the law of the land. And there's a growing number of people who just say, somewhere this has to be referred to in the Bible. What they call this extreme fundamentalism cannot be that big and not mentioned. And people are beginning to think in terms of Revelation 13. Somehow this has to be a sign of the times. Revelation 13:7, where it says, he was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them. He caused all who refused to worship the image to be killed, to be forced everyone to receive a mark, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark. And some key Adventist theologians have begun to say, we cannot allow Uriah Smith and the early pioneers of our church to be the final word on exactly identifying who these beasts are. and identify them in the terms of the beasts of their time and of who were doing awful, coercive kinds of things in their time and their culture. Every generation for 2,000 years has read the book of Revelation and applied these beast powers to whatever was going on. Some power that was doing evil, beastly things. If you do beastly things, then you're part of the beast. Maybe not all the beast, but you're part of the beast. And expanding and making this a contemporary understanding of the beast. And so people are suggesting that maybe this extreme fundamentalism of Islam is at least one modern, contemporary, not ignoring the others, but saying, is this part of the beast also? Protestant writers for 1,000 years have been identifying some form of the medieval Catholic Church as the beast. The little horn in Daniel and the beast in Revelation. And there are others now in our church that have reacted to this other idea that the beast could be reinterpreted all the time and say, no. There is only one application of the beast. And we know who it is. And it's 666. And it has these identifying markers. And we know who it is. And that's what it is. There are not many beasts. There are not beasts all over everywhere. This is the one beast. And they think that we should be focused on that. And there's no question in 1,000 years, that was the only church there was, did some beastly things. They had armies, they did massacres, and the Pope has had to apologize for some of those things. And so we have this sort of tension in the church. Doug Batchelor in the Amazing Facts, I don't know if you got this in the mail, but I got it. And he took the year 2014 and he put together quotations and stories that were in the news about the Catholic Church. I'm not here to beat up on anybody's church. It's just things that were interesting. And they feel like are signs of the times and fulfillments of Revelation. So they had a charismatic conference over in England last year. I remember when this occurred. And one of the bishops of the Church of England has since passed away. Since the last year. But after the Pope, the new Pope, sent over a video of a welcome to this charismatic conference, he shouted out in front of the whole crowd, he says, the protest is over, the Reformation is over, we're really all Catholics. News went out all over the world. Many others in here. Obama went over to meet with the Pope. Joel Osteen went over and met with the Pope, said some very nice things. A number of our famous American evangelists, Kenneth Copeland and others, all went over to the Pope, had a session with him. He has offered, and others have said maybe he should be the one to help mediate the crisis in the Middle East. And he and others have suggested that they have a council of 8 or 9 world religious leaders, and he would be the head of this council to help promote Christians coming together. It's a constant theme. He's appealing to the Orthodox and to the Charismatics and various groups. We need to come together. All fulfillments of Revelation. And people are saying, see, that's the beast. But there are others who say, okay, that may well be part of the beast, but it cannot be all the beast. What are the odds that God would somehow not have something to say about these powers that are doing unspeakable things in our world today? And does not God want the church to call it out and name it and say, this is beastly, this is not okay, this is terrible? You wrap a bomb on a 10-year-old girl and send her off to kill people. It's horrible. And every generation has seen the book of Revelation fulfilled in their time. Maybe Satan would be happy if he has all kinds of different beasts in the world, but you only think there's one beast. And as long as you know where that beast is, and there it is, then you won't think about any of the other beasts, and he'll be able to do what he does, and these beasts will get away with it without being called out for being a beast, if you just think one is the beast. And maybe we need to expand our understanding. That's the beast. Anytime you use power to make people believe or act in certain ways against their own beliefs, it's beastly. Part of Revelation 13. Interesting story in an article about this that Charles Teal last year wrote about it. He was at a meeting and a Catholic was there. And he said, I hear that you people teach that the Catholic Church is the beast and so on. Tried to explain. The beast stands for any power that opposes God and that uses force and power and control to coerce people against their own conscience and their beliefs. And he said, and there are many beasts that have oppressed God's people over time. He said, yes, the medieval church has had longer to do that than anyone else. That they have done some beastly things. Yes, they have. He said, I've stood there at the statues of the Inquisition in Spain. Terrible things were done. Why does a church have to have an army? You can send them into a mountain village where people are not following your beliefs, and you send an army and destroy the whole village. That is beastly. He said, I have sat on a truck for the hours with a pastor in his 80s in Colombia who had scars all over his back when the Catholic people tied him to a tree and whipped him because he was a Protestant. That's beastly. Yes, that's beastly. But there are other beasts besides that. The Pope John Paul has apologized for some of the beastly things that have been done in the past. But we cannot just point to something that was done 80 years or 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago when there are beasts today that are doing beastly things. And take 300 Christian girls off into the jungle and tie a bomb on a 10-year-old girl. It's horrible. It's horrible. Well, you'll see how far you'll go with me today. Are there beastly things in church, our church, all churches? I've been teaching a class on Monday nights for 3 or 4 weeks here on what they call workplace spirituality. And because it's a class on spirituality, I brought up the phrase, I'm spiritual but not religious. Have you heard that phrase? 25% now in America mark that on the survey as who they are. And when I brought that up, mostly class Adventists and Christians, I said, how do you feel about this? Virtually the whole class agreed with that idea. I'm spiritual but not religious. So I said, you're trying to tell me something. I'm a pastor. Just write it down. Tell me why you feel this way. What has religion done in your life that makes you feel that somehow you don't want religion, you just want to be spiritual, but not religious. You want to be against organized religion. And they broke up into groups and they began to give me their reports and to kind of summarize it. They're tired of feeling judged by the church. Too many rules, too many fingers pointing, too much criticism, too much you have to worry about what other people think. And then they began to tell stories. I can't tell them all. I was leading the discussion. I couldn't write them all down. I could write a book of the stories I heard last Monday night in one class in 1 hour. Every story just made me want to cry. Just say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. One young lady, maybe late 20s, had something nice to say about me. I'd forgotten her, had no idea who she was. She said, I came to see you, Pastor Dan, 9 years ago. I was pregnant, 8 months pregnant. I was probably sooner when she came to see me, maybe 2 or 3 months when she first came, and later this other story. And the father wanted nothing to do with me or the baby. I didn't know what to do. And we talked about abortion or adoption or try to keep the baby. What should we do? And you helped me work it through. And I decided to keep the baby. I remember none of this. And he says, when I was 8 months pregnant, another man began to talk to me, young man. and began to date me, 8 months pregnant with another man's child. And after the baby was born, a few weeks later, we got married. And this man married me with another man's child. The other original father eventually allowed us to adopt the baby. That girl is 8 years old now. We have a second one. We're all in church. Thank me. And then she told this story. She says, I brought the little young child, baby, small little girl to church. And she had little earrings on, the little baby, and when one of the saints of the church came up to her and made a big fuss, oh, your baby's so cute. Too bad you had to put earrings on her. That's not good. And the whole class had stories like that. Everyone. Pastor Dan. I don't remember them all. I told one, I said, when I first came to La Sierra, the first Sabbath of the school year, maybe I've told this, the one young man I found out came to the back of the church about 11:45. His girlfriend was singing in the choir. He had long hair, he had a t-shirt on, he had tattoos and whatnot. He was there to wait for the girlfriend. Didn't come in, just waited out there. And one of my saints, we still today do not know who it was, said to him, young man, you're really not dressed good enough for church. You need to wait outside. He told the girlfriend told the mother came to tell me. I'm walking to the cafeteria for the potluck. I hunted them back down till I found this young man. I apologize. I'm so sorry. You can come to church any way you want. And eventually we became very close friends, and he did come back to church. But he told the girlfriend, I will never go back to church again. We sent a letter out to the whole church leadership. Deacon, we don't know who it was. So we sent it to 200 people. And just said, students and people can come to this church any way they want. We're just glad you're in church. Anytime we use power and control to try to control someone else's beliefs and their lifestyle, we're doing beastly things. So you can be in church and follower of Jesus and be on the remnant day and all of that and still have beastly parts of fulfill Revelation 13. Using power to do it. God is a God of absolute freedom. Jesus says in John 8, the truth will set you free. Galatians 5, verse 13, you were called to freedom. 2 Corinthians 3:17, one of my favorite verses, where the Spirit is, there is freedom. If it doesn't feel free to you, then it's not coming from the Holy Spirit. It's coming from people somewhere else. And that has become the beast. Matthew 23:37, Jesus is standing over Jerusalem with his disciples, and he says, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I wanted to gather you to myself like a mother hen gathers her chicks under her wings. But you would not. And I had to let you follow your choice. God is a God who is always into freedom. Beast control. Jesus is freedom of choice. Always. The Adventist Church taught for a while that 1844 was going to be the day when Jesus was going to come. They believed at that day that he would come down here and cleanse this earth, and they thought he was going to come, but he didn't come. And so they reinterpreted it to say what happened, he went from one room to another in heaven, and he started a judgment. And everybody has to come to that judgment, and they will open up the big books, and they will begin to read everything you've ever done. And if you have not forgiven and confessed all of those and worked that out of your life, your name will be blotted out of the Lamb's book of life. But if you really read the book of Daniel, and Daniel chapter 7, the judgment is not in Daniel 7 about you and me. It is about the beast and the little horn. Read in this passage, Daniel 7, but the court will sit and his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. Verse 11, the beast was killed and destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. Revelation 19, the beast and the false prophet were thrown alive into the lake of fire. And a time today to deal with the fire. That isn't the point. The judgment is not about you and me. The judgment is against the Babylons and the beasts and the little horns and these people that have hurt God's people. And they will be judged. And they will have, eventually, the consequence of that. Whoever beasts that have hurt you, any beasts that have somehow damaged your life. Maybe you've been treated unfair by somebody. Maybe you have to work with somebody that's just kind of hell to have to work with them. Maybe someone has cheated on you. Someone has hurt you. Someone has said something about you that just wasn't fair and you were not able to work it out. The message of Daniel is that someday there is going to be a judgment. God is not going to allow the beasts and the little horns to do this to people forever. There is a line, and someday there is going to be a judgment. Not against you and me, but against the beasts and the little horns and the Babylons of the world. And God will say, enough, enough. And God will make it up to all of us, and you and I will all be justified before God. Is that good news or bad news? That there will be a judgment someday. Let's be clear who the enemy of the judgment is about. It's against the people who have persecuted God and made war against the saints of God. And now we have this other group that Revelation calls a remnant. Revelation 12, verse 17, you all know the verse. The dragon was angry with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Who what? Keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. There's a remnant. All the way through the book of Revelation, there's a remnant. Could it be, my dear friends, that in the same way that the beast is not just one entity that was 80 or 150 or whatever 1,000 years ago, the medieval church. But there are other beasts that have done terrible things to people. And the beast is bigger than just one church somewhere. Could it be that the remnant is also a little bigger than what you and I have thought? That the remnant is not just people who have their membership on one particular list and have a particular name they carry around with them, and the headquarters is at a general conference in Washington, D.C., or Silver Spring, or in Riverside. But the remnant's a little bigger. The remnant are those who follow Jesus, and they are those who keep the commandments of God, and they fight against the beasts and the Babylons and the little horns of the world. All the way through the book of Revelation, the remnant are those who are in this great controversy. And they are part of the army of Christ, marching behind Christ on the white horse. And when they see something that is just wrong, they fight against it. That's what remnants do. And they fight when they see something that's just wrong. Maybe all they can do is just call it out, that this is not okay. It is just wrong to put a bomb on a 10-year-old girl. And somewhere there has to be a response where people stand up and say, this is not okay. This has got to stop. And there has to be a call from the remnants. This is not okay. And when a girl comes along the way and says, I would like to be a pastor. I think God has called me to be a pastor. And somebody says, no, you cannot. Because you're a girl, you can't do that. Somebody has to stand up and say, no, that's beastly if you try to stop what God has called in someone's heart. And you speak up. Or when there's racism or something else, all the other isms of the world. We speak up. Jesus cast the demons out. He could just walk in and just cast them out. We do it as a church when we stand as a remnant and we push back against the evil of the world. And we say, not here. Not here. And so we fight against the beasts and the Babylons. We have a long history of this. Fernando and Anna Stahl. We have a Stahl Center last year. They went down to Peru and South America. Someday I want to go see this. They did not just go into a place and they have schools and preach evangelism and win souls. When 5% group of the leaders or the so-called white people now rule over the 95% who are being persecuted and oppressed, they fought that. And they went to court, and they went to Congress, and they did whatever they could to change the whole situation. They fought against the beasts and the little horns and Babylons of their time. And they are revered now in Peru for being missionaries who didn't just win souls, but they fought against the beasts. That's what remnants do. If I can go one more step. We had a book come out, sent to every pastor last week. It's called Tremble. I've read most of it. I haven't had time to read every word in it. But it is one of the books, among many over the last few years, that have come out trying to identify what is the Omega apostasy. Ellen White one time said that Kellogg there in Battle Creek was the Alpha, this terrible pantheism, that everything is God. You and I are God, everything is God. He said, that's the Alpha. Someday there will be an Omega. She doesn't say what it is, says almost nothing about it. And so every few years, someone else thinks they've got it figured out. And they publish another book. And this person has decided that our young pastors who have started the One Project, that's the Omega. So we all went down there. These are my friends. These are people who are absolutely, deeply committed Seventh-day Adventist pastors, who are pastors of churches in this conference and all across this country, who just have a burden that Jesus be the center of the Adventist church. Their mission is that Jesus would be returned and the supremacy of Jesus would be restored in every part of the Adventist church. That's their mission. And some group somewhere thinks that they're the true remnant, and that they should be the ones to say that that's not okay and you have to stop. And my question is, if the beasts are those who try to control other people's beliefs, and the remnant are those who stand up for Jesus, who is the beast and which is the remnant? Which side are we on? When 1,000 people come to hear Jesus preached for 2 days, how can you call that out like that and say that that's the Omega apostasy that is going to destroy the church? Hard to understand. Hard to understand. And so I just wanted to take a stand today. Maybe this is one of the sermons that I should have waited until I retired. But I decided I was going to start preaching some of them before I retire. Maybe that'll help me get retired. I believe all the traditional interpretations of the beast and the remnant, but I believe there are more beasts in the world today. And that I am happy to be part of any group that stands for Jesus, stands for the commandments, and stands to fight against human trafficking or racism or sexism or whatever other isms there are, that we fight as a remnant of God against the beasts and the demons of the dragons of the world. I can't stop without just a reference to the Miracle on Ice. 35 years ago, some of you were not here yet, but others of us were. Where were you when our U.S. college boys were playing hockey at Lake Placid, 1980 in the Olympics against the Russians? Back then, these were pros against us, had won every game against us for many years. And all of a sudden, here we are in this Miracle on Ice game, semifinal game, and our 22, 25-year-old college kids are winning against the Russians. Miracle on Ice. They all got together this last week at Lake Placid. Every single one who was still alive was there. They're my age. And relished this 35-year anniversary. I remember hearing a sermon by Joseph Stoll, the president of Moody Bible Institute. And he said, boy, we all sat there on our couches on the edge of our seat. Our hands were sweaty. Could these boys do it? Against all the odds, somehow win against the Russians, those terrible, evil empire at the other side of the world. And we did it. He said that night, we watched it again. They showed it again. Now we're not sitting on the edge of our seats. We are not have sweaty palms. We're getting bags of popcorn and we're sitting back on our couch and just enjoying the game. What made the difference? We knew who won. Already knew. That's who we are. And if I could say this to the 26 kids in my class, that I hope someday can be spiritual and religious in the best sense of the word. Don't let anybody control you. Don't let anybody finger point. Don't let any judge you. Don't let anybody put rules on you that you don't agree with. Live in freedom. And be part of a remnant that fights against all forms of coercion, oppression, using power to make people against what you believe. We need more remnant people. And we can't afford to lose those 26 kids or anybody else. Amen? Thank you for letting me share my heart today.